The United States and other members of the UN Security Council are trying to put together an agreement with Iran over its nuclear program. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it looks even worse than he had feared.
Israel's defense minister also calls it a very bad deal. John Wagi brings us the story from Jerusalem.
At times, the atmosphere in Switzerland seems almost playful, even among sometime adversaries like the U.S. and Russia.
I'm not paid to be optimistic.
You're not paid enough to be optimistic.
The parties claim they're as close as ever to a deal that would ease sanctions on Iran in exchange for international controls to make sure Tehran's nuclear program stays peaceful.
To make a deal that is good for non-proliferation, for security in the region and in the world, and also for the sake of regional stability and security. It would be important to reach a deal. We are united on this as Europeans, not only as Europeans, I believe, as international community.
But here in Jerusalem, such talk would be laughable if there weren't a direct threat to Israel's existence. On Sunday, one columnist here wrote, "The idea of an Iranian nuclear weapon is surreal and frightening, but by Tuesday it could be a reality on the ground. This is truly crazy." Even as he tries to form a government, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continued to warn such a deal would be bad for the world. He hosted Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and a GOP delegation this weekend.
Will this make their move forward more moderate, or will it make it more extreme? I think it's a no-brainer. But this is happening before our eyes. And I think the most important thing is to make sure that Iran doesn't get a path to the bomb, and that Iran's aggression in Yemen and elsewhere, including around Israel's borders, is stopped.
McConnell assured Netanyahu of strong bipartisan support for Israel's position in Congress.
The group who are here share your concerns about this potential agreement, and there are options that the United States has in the wake of an agreement and if there is no agreement. The option, if there's an agreement, is a bill that we intend to vote on that enjoys bipartisan support to require that agreement to come to Congress for approval.
If the deal goes through, Israelis will have to create their own plan based on what they believe is certain to be unchecked aggression on the part of Iran. John Wagi, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, here's a scenario. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, I think Saudi Arabia will then be the next to go for one. You look at this war currently going on in Yemen, it's a proxy war between the two of them. And if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia is going to have to follow, and then Egypt will have to follow. And then you start asking, well, what happens then if you have a nuclear Middle East? Talk about scenarios that induce horror. That's one of them. Well, here at home, the governor of Indiana is pushing back against criticism of his state's new religious freedom law. Ephraim Graham has that story from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, from the White House to social media, critics say Indiana's new law discriminates against gays and lesbians. But Governor Mike Pence says those critics are missing the point of the law. He says it's about protecting Americans from government overreach. Gary Lane has the story.
After protesters took to the streets in opposition to the Indiana law, and celebrities unleashed a flurry of critical tweets, Indiana Governor Mike Pence took to the airwaves. He explained the purpose of the state's Religious Freedom Restoration Act is to protect people of faith, not discriminate against gays and lesbians.
The issue here is, is tolerance a two-way street or not? I mean, there's a lot of talk about tolerance in this country today having to do with people on the left. But here Indiana steps forward to protect the constitutional rights and privileges of freedom of religion for people of faith and families of faith in our state. And this avalanche of intolerance that's been poured on our state is just outrageous.
In fact, Pence and supporters of the Indiana law say it's similar to federal legislation signed by President Bill Clinton and laws approved by 19 other states, including Illinois. Back then, State Senator Barack Obama voted for it. The White House responded. Spokesman Josh Ernst said, "The bill Mr. Obama supported in Illinois did not legitimize discrimination." Critics say the Indiana law allows businesses like florists and bakeries to go unpunished when denying service to gay couples for religious reasons. That's happened in other states, where some Christians have already lost their businesses. On the ABC program this week, George Stephanopoulos attacked Pence on that point.
Do you think it should be legal in the state of Indiana to discriminate against gays or lesbians?
George,
it's a yes or no question.
Come on, Hoosiers don't believe in discrimination. This is about protecting the religious liberty of every Hoosier, of every faith.
And most people support the idea. One poll taken last February showed 57% of Americans believe business owners should not be forced to provide services for same-sex weddings if they have religious objections. Meanwhile, the uproar is expected to continue. The NCAA has expressed concerns as Indiana prepares to host college basketball's Final Four. And other companies and businesses may soon bow to pressure to boycott Indiana, possibly costing the state millions of dollars in tax revenues. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Nigerians cast their ballots in the presidential election this weekend, and Boko Haram terrorists killed at least 40 people in a replay of the violence from the 2011 elections. The election results are expected at some point today. The race has come down to a critically close contest between President Goodluck Jonathan, a 57-year-old Christian from the South, and former dictator of the military, Muhammadu Buhari. He is 72 and from the predominantly Muslim North. Christians in the country are praying for peace.
There's fear because of previous experience, because of 2011, those that were in Kanu wouldn't want to stay back because of what they experienced. So actually there's fear that the same thing may still reoccur.
After the 2011 election, suicide bombers blew up several cars filled with explosives across the city, killing more than 150 people, as many were Christians targeted for their faith. Despite the fears of violence, Christians in Nigeria joined their fellow believers around the world in celebrating Palm Sunday yesterday, kicking off Easter week events around the world. In Jerusalem, thousands of Christian pilgrims retraced the steps of Jesus. It's called Palm Sunday because Jesus' followers waved palm branches to celebrate the Messiah as he entered the holy city just before his arrest and crucifixion by the Romans. Christians in Bethlehem said their hearts are with their suffering brothers and sisters facing persecution throughout the Middle East. And Gordon, of course, us here in America, our prayers are with them as well.
And I hope our prayers are with them all week. This Easter week, set aside time every day to pray for the persecuted Christians around the world, and especially those in the Middle East today. The ancient Christian communities of the Middle East are being systematically wiped out, and we need to pray for them.